everyone. So panel number one is the power of storytelling and effective strategies. So this is going to be a panel of approximately 40 minutes. And I'd like to introduce the panelists are Jackie Garrick, who is a CEO of Whistleblowers of America. We have Sheila White. Sheila is famous for her U.S. Supreme Court case, Burlington Northern and Santa Fe v. White. And we also have Ms. Kamei, who is an international bestselling author and the Dignity at Work Nevada State Representative. So what I'd like to do for this panel, because I know I didn't do your introductions the justice that it deserves, is I'd really like each of the panelists to just go ahead and just take a couple of minutes, maybe just expounding a little bit on what brought you here, why are you happy to be a part of the program today, and just a couple of highlights that maybe you want to share for the audience that maybe doesn't understand the full background and experiences that you've gone through. So if I could ask maybe each of the panelists to maybe take about 2 minutes each, just summarizing again, just kind of some key points, and then we're going to go into some moderated discussion. So we'll start with Sheila White.
Good morning, everybody. I'm enjoying it. And thank you, Ms. Kim. And what brought me to this program or summit was I was interested in the panels, and also that what I'll be discussing is what a lot of us are discussing about retaliation, any form of harassment in the workplace. And I'm enjoying it.
Hi, everybody. My name is Miss Kamei, and I am so grateful to be here today along with the other panelists. This is an amazing opportunity and platform to talk about the horrible experiences that so many working class Americans experience every day. I am here today to use my voice to share my story, and also to leave everyone who attends the summit or watches the summit on replay. I want to leave you all empowered. I want to leave you all with a vision for your future, knowing that you do not have to stay in the environment that you're in. And I want you to understand how powerful you are in this entire scenario. And that is my goal for today speaking.
Hi, I'm Jackie Garrick. I'm a former Army officer, and I had spent about 16 years in the government, and went through my own whistleblowing experience while at the Pentagon, and came to this issue thinking, how many of us could there possibly be, right? And didn't think there was that many, was looking for people who could help me, and then more and more began to connect. And so I really believe in the power of peer support. I see this a little differently. This isn't about us empowering ourselves. It's about us empowering each other and building a sense of community and working these cases not so much in isolation anymore, but finding mentors and people you can connect with to help you tell your story and bring your case to the light of day, and to facilitate the recovery and the post-traumatic growth that Natalie was talking about. That's a big part of our mission, and why I wanted to be part of the panel today was so that we could share our message, get the attention for Whistleblowers of America, and ask you all to think about becoming whistleblower protection advocates and go through our certification process. So Kim, back to you.
Thank you so much, Jackie and Sheila and Ms. Kamei. And we actually have one more panelist who's going to be joining us, Marcel Reed. We're just syncing up her Zoom line, so she'll be joining in just a moment. So I really just want to dive in a little bit more. So each of your stories are so powerful. And so when we really process, you know, a lot of survivors as was mentioned previously at the beginning of the summit, we have trauma and we have growth. So from your experiences, and maybe I'll kick this off to Sheila first. How many years did you really go through your experiences with your former employer, and maybe can you talk to how did you make that decision to continue to fight, or when did you walk away? So maybe just kind of walk us through, because I know your case had a lot of longevity.
Yes, ma'am. I worked for Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railroad. I got hired in 1997. Can everybody hear me?
Mhm.
Yes.
Making sure y'all could hear me. And I was the only female in the group that got hired in that department, maintenance away. So the males did not want a female in that department. They never had one to work there. So from day one, when I was introduced by my foreman, I think I can share this, that we all introduced ourselves. And he said, well, Sheila, when you come on your period, let us know so we can make your job easier. So I said, what kind of man is this to say that out loud? So that day on, I started taking notes, documenting. From the day on, I worked from 1997 to 2002. I had a journal that followed me from sunup to sundown. I was harassed every day. I was sent out of town overnight, saying I had to be at this state to work in so many hours. I was under constant surveillance on the job. So I was harassed every day. My supervisor, we had a train derailment one night. My supervisor came in and said, Sheila, shine the flashlight on me so I could see where I pee. So um, that didn't sit well with me at all, but I was on probation. I had a 90-day probation. But all this time I was documenting because I knew the next step I was going to take. So when I made my probationary period, I went to the company and filed a report complaint. And what they did was they investigated, took my supervisor, put him on suspension after all the witnesses said, yes, that did happen. But they brought him back and put me right back up on him. So they did not want me out there, period. So um, it took me 9.5 years to fight for justice in the workplace. I filed 3 charges. Number 1 was sexual harassment. Number 2 was discrimination. And number 3 was the retaliation. So like I said, 9.5 years. And I went to federal district court and won. They see no problem with sexual harassment or any form of harassment in the workplace. But I won on retaliation. They didn't want me to have nothing. They fought every tooth and nail against me. So we went to Supreme Court. Thank you, Justice Ginsburg and um, Celia, Justice Celia. Both of them were in my favor. And I won 9-0 against Burlington Northern Santa Fe, which it took me 9.5 years to fight, but I stood my grounds. I did not give up and I didn't give in. So I was making my long story and journal short for everybody. So um, that was it. But I'm still fighting. And I'm going to keep on fighting for the ones that can't speak. And there's a lot I'm afraid to speak out. I will continue to fight for the small ones in the workplace, for everybody. But it is twice as hard for a woman in the workplace. So I have experienced it, and I speak all over United States with the EEOCs and the Lawyer Association at their bars and summits. So thank you for listening and me letting me share my story with you.
Thank you so much, Sheila. And a lot of people, it's even hard to wrap their minds around. That's almost a decade with just the complaint processes, and we're so grateful for the outcome of your case because it's really helped so many other survivors coming after you. So certainly an honor to have you part of the summit in this space. So the next question, I want to kick it off to Jackie. And Jackie, if you can maybe just touch on your experiences and when did you make that decision to start Whistleblowers of America? What was kind of the motivating factor of that? Just if you kind of expand a little bit more from your own personal journey to making that decision that you then wanted to advocate for others.
Thank you. Yes, and it's so great to be part of this great panel. I've met some of these ladies before. I love Marcel. She's been my peer support more times than she probably cares to recall because we've been on the phone many hours. So grateful just to see Sheila and Kim, and hopefully I'll get to meet Miss Kemi in person someday. But so my story begins at the Pentagon, and it begins with very, very naive thinking. I thought I was in a position to make decisions. I thought I was in a position to have power. And what I did was I made a disclosure at what I thought was an attempt at fraud with suicide prevention dollars. I didn't want to see our service members harmed, and we were working really hard on allocating and spending money and bringing programs to the Pentagon, to the services, the Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marine Corps, and the Coast Guard. We wanted to make sure that we were across the board engaging in suicide prevention activities that were meaningful and with purpose. So I was doing all of that when somebody wanted me to move money from the contracts that we had, which I hadn't awarded in the first place, and move those contracts to a company where she had been a vice president and her husband was a sub to a prime. And I thought, well, you can't do that. And I made my first disclosure. I didn't know it was a disclosure. I went and had a conversation and started to identify and document what I thought was wrongdoing. That led to my the same person saying I wasn't qualified for my job, and I ended up removed. It took me 5 years, and in May I got a Merit System Protection Board, MSPB, for those of you who know the government. An MSPB decision reversed the previous government decision, and they ordered me my benefits. So, and I did all of this pro se. And I think the storytelling piece and the need for peer support that I found along the way became so important because I had spent most of my career working with and around the military. I'm an Army officer. Um, and combat trauma and combat veterans and PTSD is something I knew really well. And then one night I woke up from a nightmare. I was sweating, my heart was racing, and I thought, oh my God, I've got PTSD from all of this. And I began to think about, so I was ruminating about how I was ruminating, if you could believe that. And the intrusive thoughts and the nightmares and the guilt for not being able to prevent the suicides, all of the things that as a social worker that I saw fit in with PTSD, I was beginning to experience and see as I applied it to my workplace situation. And then as I started to connect to more and more people, it was a conversation with a federal law enforcement officer who said, I'm so glad we talked today because I've been sitting here with my revolver on my table thinking about killing myself. That really made me think, oh my gosh, we really have to be connecting with each other. We need each other as survivors. We need the peer support. And that's when I called an attorney, and I met, and through that attorney I actually met Natalie Quam. And we decided to incorporate Whistleblowers of America and begin this journey to provide peer support and create networks for people. And it's now 3 years later, and I am closing in on almost 600 people that I've connected with, people that I've helped connect to other people, to attorneys, to journalists, to members of Congress. That networking and that advocacy is what I think makes the difference. So for me, a call to action today, um, one is about raising awareness, but two, it's about the networking and the advocating and the joining forces that makes us stronger together. I always say we are united in speaking truth to power. So back to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jackie. And you've done just so much work on behalf of so many survivors. It just can't be understated. And it looks like Marcel Reed has joined us. So I know we didn't allow her time to kind of just introduce herself. Marcel is representing and also the founder of the Whistleblower Summit and Film Festival, and who is one of our executive sponsors. Marcel, if you're able to unmute and say hello, and we're kind of just having a conversation on, just our stories and the power of storytelling and just some of the things that you've seen through your perspective.
Thank you very much, Kim. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear
you.
Good, good. Well, hello. I know quite a few of you on this call, Ms. Cami. I hope to introduce myself and to get to know you as well. First of all, I'd like to say what an outstanding panel this is. I know many of you, and your stories are sobering. I became a whistleblower because I was with an organization called ACORN, and I was trying to protect the women who were in ACORN, who were, some of you are familiar with the organization, some are not. It was a group of low-income communities throughout the country. And the people there were just like me. They were poor people. I used to say the part of ACORN that made it so effective was that the people knew they were poor, as opposed to other people who are poor and don't know it. So they were organized around the issue because they splinter into believing they're middle class. It was a great organization, but it was taking advantage of the membership. And these people were poor and knew it, and all that they had was hope. And the one thing that I don't think you can take from anyone is hope, because that's all that gets us through. So in an attempt to protect the ladies I was working with, I had started to report some irregularities, and the next thing I knew, I was a whistleblower, which startled me. And then I started to believe something I had learned in church, which is all you have to do is tell the truth, and everything will work out all right. That had been drummed into me since I was a very small child. And so I thought speaking the truth louder and more consistently would make everything work out. Little did I know that you can often tell the truth and your life is ruined. I lost almost everything I had behind this journey of whistleblowing, nearly everything. And what it did to me was it made me stop and re-examine the truths that I just took as absolutes. You know, they're lying, you tell the truth, it overcomes the lie, and everything goes back into place. So what I can say about whistleblowing is the single most sobering thing that happened to me was finding out that very often truth is not rewarded, but instead is absolutely punished. And I think once you find that out, and once you start to connect with other people who know that and survive it, I think it's a great thing. I was very happy to see Jackie join Miss, the Make It Safe Coalition, because for years running this summit with Michael McCrae, we had been looking for someone who could address this issue of whistleblower PTSD, because very often people blow the whistle and their lives never come back online. So I spent hours talking to Jackie about this. I had reached out to various professional organizations in the past to see if they could provide some kind of help to whistleblowers, and they never did. But Jackie came in and she started to not only talk about the trauma that had hit the whistleblowers, but to be able to analyze it and to give us strategies for moving forward. And everyone else, Kim has just been amazing. Sheila White, her story of bravery and tenacity just absolutely makes you stop. So I'm going on a little more than I wanted to, so excuse me for that, but I'm very happy to be here and thank you for inviting me.
Thank you so much for and looks like there might be some audio feedback. Apologize for that. But thank you, Marcel, for being here. And, you know, it's just, again, a lot of people, it's just hard to kind of wrap their minds around, you know, when you say, you know, telling the truth, you know, you would think that would be rewarded. But unfortunately, for a lot of survivors, we often know that's not the case. Unfortunately, and you know, many of us are met with retaliation. You've talked about losing, you know, a whole lot, you know, in your life, and that's so difficult for people to then recover from that. And so people certainly question, you know, is it worth it? And so, kind of on that theme, I want to use the next slot to ask Ms. Kamei to maybe share a little bit more of your journey, your experiences, and what really drives you, you know, to fight for other survivors. So if you can maybe speak to some of the work you're doing at the state level and just throughout your journey as you've encountered and met with other survivors. Again, just what is within you personally that drives you to keep speaking up, keep speaking out?
Yeah, great question, Kim. Great question. Thank you so much, you know, for giving me the opportunity. My experience of being bullied in the workplace took place in a insurance defense litigation staff counsel office. So I've worked in law for 2 decades as a senior paralegal. And when I realized what was happening to me, I immediately just knew that what was happening to me was illegal. And, you know, I had met the burden of proof, right? So loss of enjoyment of life, emotional distress, financial loss, and so many elements that are needed in a personal injury civil lawsuit. And so when I started to do research on the topic, and this was back in 2013, 2014, when I started to research the topic, I was emotionally upset to see that bullying in America was completely legal. And I had a really hard time understanding that because I work in law. I understand the burden of proof. I understand elements required, you know, in civil litigation, many which I had met. And so I knew that something had to be done. I just could not understand how it could be legal in our country. And in my research, I think really what terrified me the most and really is the root of where my passion comes from and my dedication to this topic, not just my own experience, but in my research, I'll never forget a YouTube video that I watched, and it was a mother narrating the video. And she was saying, you know, I knew my daughter was being bullied at work. I knew there were some things going on, but I never thought that she would take her own life over it. Mm-hmm. And I was horrified. I could understand, I could relate, but I just could not believe that people were committing suicide over being bullied in the workplace and no one was talking about it. No one was talking about it. There was nothing at the city level, nothing at the state level, just nothing on social media at this time. I was absolutely horrified. And that's really where it began. In being bullied in the workplace, I lost everything. I lost my home. I lost belongings of my mother, who was in heaven. I lost my career. Ended up having to relocate out of Washington State because I could not get a job in the legal community. So not only did I suffer the experience, the emotional distress, the severe anxiety, the PTSD, all of those mental health issues, I suffered financially, and I suffered in my career that I had fought so hard for. I have a legal degree. I've dedicated my life to law. And so that's, where my passion came from. I wanted to help other people build a strong claim against a bullying employer that they could potentially file in a court of law with damages and receive a recovery and have a remedy. And working in law and understanding that it takes legislation, right? It takes people, it takes us, it takes a united force to come forward and pursue legislation. That is the only way that we are really going to create change. We have to talk about it. We have to break the silence around workplace bullying. We have to stand up, to speak out. We have to empower other people. We have to empower their confidence. We have to empower their resiliency. We have to empower them in their voice to speak up about what's going on in their workplace so that we can be heard, and then pursue legislation. So I have done many things over the year on the topic. Currently, as a chair with the National Workplace Bullying Coalition, I am the Nevada State Bill Director for the Dignity at Work Act. We are pursuing the bill to our state legislatures. I actually just recently confirmed a meeting with Senator Jackie Rosen, senior counsel here in Nevada, to actually sit down and meet with him, with a couple of other board members at NWBC, and introduce the Dignity at Work Act bill with him, and potentially meet with our state Senator Jackie Rosen and discuss the topic as well. I always have had a big vision. I've always thought globally and internationally. And so I'm going for the front seat and using my voice to share my story and to explain to our legislatures how serious this is, that bullying in the workplace is killing the American workforce. The big wheel that keeps everything going is deteriorating from the inside out. So that's where my passion comes from. And I stop doing this. I will never stop speaking on the topic. I consult with clients who are bullied in the workplace and help them build a claim against their bullying employer, and put them in a position where they are maintaining personal power despite the odds that are stacked against them, but teaching them in the moment to find some personal power and navigate a bullying retaliatory environment and stay focused on what the big goal is at the end of it, and put them in a position where they're going to come out winning.
Absolutely, Ms. Kamei, and thank you for all the work that you're doing. And you're absolutely right with respect to bullying is completely legal on the federal side and in many states across the country. And so the advocacy work that you're doing on the ground and using your voice to tell your story, to march into those offices and demand those meetings is really what's necessary to make the change that we need. And there's certainly a lot of parallels between workplace bullying and what some of the other panelists have spoken to with respect to whistleblowing. And,
Yes.
and all of it is detrimental and harmful, and everyone certainly deserves to be treated with dignity at work.
Yes.
I'll make a plug. again, so all of the panelists have shared information, and they'll continue to share information, but the executive sponsors, all of their links are embedded at nationalsummitforsurvivors.com. So as you're listening to them, if you want more information, please go to their individual websites, or you can go to nationalsummitforsurvivors.com. I wanted to open the floor up for some Q&A. Hopefully that feature is turned on and live. I'm getting thumbs up that it is. So while some questions kind of trickle in, what I want each of the panelists to just kind of think about, again, the theme of this panel is about the power of storytelling and effective strategies. So I can certainly imagine we have some audience members that, again, depending on where they're at with their trauma, with their journey, with their experiences, are definitely thinking about, well, how can I be effective at my storytelling? Do I feel comfortable, marching into the state capitol or wherever? So can you kind of just talk a little bit, maybe just each of you briefly, while we get some questions synced up here, on what would be maybe one or two bits of advice that you would give in terms of effective strategy for storytelling, and then we'll get a couple of Q&A in.
Yes.
So yeah, anyone can jump in. Sorry.
Yeah. So if I field phone calls every day from people, and so one of the things we talk a lot about is the narrative, and the narrative has to be tailored to the audience, right? So that's something I find is really helpful to have. That initial conversation is about how you tell your story and to whom. So for example, like if you're trying to tell your story to a lawyer or reporter, you need to have more of a timeline. If you want to engage a reporter or a member of Congress, think of the elevator speech version. So have your 500 words or less. Do not dump on someone the 20, 30, 50, 150 pages of your case, because as an introduction, nobody is going to really be able to digest all of that at once. You want to be able to make your story compelling up front and digestible to the right audience at the right time. When I first went and saw EAP because I was just having all this anxiety. She told me, start your own journal. And I thought, well, there's advice I've given 1,000 times myself, right? So there's a piece of this too that you should do for you. You may never share it. You may never want to take this to the public, but getting that rumination onto paper and being able to look back over time and seeing it, looking at what I wrote in 2015 was very different than the things I was writing and doing in 2017, 2018, 2019. And then some of that and some of those lessons learned, I kept writing. I wrote op-eds, I wrote articles, I've also written a book. Woohoo! We just got Springer Publishing Company just gave me a contract for a book on whistleblower retaliation and the psychosocial impacts of that. And I've testified before Congress, so I've written testimony. All of these different things are a way of focusing your narrative, but making sure you have it for the right audience and for the right time.
Yeah, I would to add to what Jackie said. Great suggestions. It's very important, and your audience, who you're talking to, and most importantly, the message that you want to communicate. At the end of all of it, what is your message? I tell my clients that I consult with, document the facts. Document the date, on this time, this person was present, this is what happened. Remove the dramatics. As hard as it is, as challenging as it is, especially as a target, being in an environment where you're being bullied and retaliated against. Focus on the facts.
Right.
Do not document your feelings. Do not document how absurd you think it is. Do not document how unfair. Don't write down what you really think about your boss. Remove the dramatics and the drama and the emotion. out of your narrative. You want to state the facts. Do your research. You know, I will share the state of Nevada right now. Nevada is one of the one of the few states in our country where bullying is illegal in our schools. So right now, our prior governor, Governor Sandoval, signed into legislation laws that made bullying in schools illegal. So as I prepare to meet with Senator Rosen Senior Counsel, I'm going to have done my research on the law, and I'm going to know the facts, and I'm going to come in and I'm going to share my story. I'm going to state the facts, and I'm also going to connect making bullying in our workplace. I'm going to align it and connect it with law that's already in place in our state. So it makes sense, right? A lot of times we want to change the parallel. We have to find, you know, something that we can meet middle on the topic, which can be challenging. You know, any of you that are watching the panel, when you start to talk about it and speak about it, when you're addressing anybody, you know, attorneys, again, leave the dramatics out of it. Do your research. You can, you know, talk about, hey, Nevada has laws right now that makes bullying illegal in their school. Like, we're essentially replacing the word school with workplace. Nevada's doing it. We need to do it. We must have these same protections in our state. So do your research, document the facts, and leave the dramatics for social media, right?
So I want to pivot though on that, because one of the things that I developed is a workplace retaliation checklist, because we use a lot of these terms and they're very nebulous. What does bullying mean? What does harassment mean? How do you start to prove that? So having your narrative, and when we're talking about legislation, yes, that's one audience, but I just finished a case with the Mahari and Scalat law firm. I interviewed 4 of their whistleblowers, and we just won $58 million from the Hanford nuclear facility. And what I did was I looked at those psychosocial implications. So we documented first the facts, what was traumatic about that, but then to start looking at the damages, we looked at the psychosocial. And part of what I've put together in my whistleblower retaliation checklist is we've started to identify, and we've done some surveys and we're doing some research about this. So what are these toxic tactics? What is mobbing, gaslighting, marginalizing, shunning, devaluing, the actual emotional and physical abuse that could come with this, the counter accusing, the double binding. So I have 9 domains, 75 indicators, and we walked very specifically through every single one of those instances, and I was able to document for Mahari and Scott, for their clients, so that they can win their awards, exactly what does retaliation look like. So I think that's a big piece of what I think we need to do as well, is we need to be able to explain the psychological trauma of whistleblower retaliation as part of our telling our story, so that we can see it in the narrative. Because for those that maybe are clinicians, you know, the DSM, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual 5th edition, talks about serious injury. Most interpret serious injury as a physical injury. They don't look at the identity disruption and the emotional harm, the moral injury. And those are the kinds of things that I think we need to focus more on and study more, so that we can address these things, especially when we start taking cases to court and we want to make somebody whole and we want to win for damages. So few cases win, and that's something I'm really committed to. And as Natalie talked about earlier, we have to be able to make that clear, not only for the legislation, but for some of these lawsuits.
Well,
Hey, good
I'd
afternoon.
like
If I could, sorry, we have 4 questions from the panelists, and I'm not sure if our moderator can see them, so I just want to make sure I get them out there. So if I could ask the first question, this is Dr. Royce James online. Welcome, everybody. So glad to have you all here. From Ruben Green, who's a panelist in a later session, asked, how important is it to show how the behavior harms the organization. And so I'll put that out for the panelists and just let you all know there's still 3 more questions here from the audience to answer.
Yeah, that's a great question. It's very important to identify and document how bullying or retaliation or just any uncivil behavior in a workplace affects the entire organization. Although there may potentially be 1 or 2 or 3 targets, there are bystanders within the organization who are witnessing the behavior, who are witnessing the retaliation, and they are affected by it as well. Oftentimes they remain silent for fear of being the next target, but it is essentially important to talk about how it's affecting the organization. It's affecting their bottom line, increases productivity, increases absenteeism. All of those, those tangible incidents can be documented. When there are people in the organization that hear something or see something, they are suffering from the experience as well. Every single person that walks in that office is subject to be affected by what's going on. So it's very important to tie that in as well. Great question.
Yeah, I would agree. We created something I call the Workplace Promise, which is based on work I had previously done with the World Health Organization. And we have these tenets of what makes a workplace healthy. So we thought we need to turn around wrongdoing into right doing and use these lessons we could learn from whistleblowers and how we can make the workplace a healthier environment. So that's what I consider the Workplace Promise, and how we can fight back as people in organizations, so that we can think about compliance and ethics and reward whistleblowers and see them as a positive part of the organization as well.
Thank you. And I know we're running a little bit short on time. And so I just want to make sure that Sheila and Marcel had a chance to answer. There's a couple of questions there, but feel free to kind of answer as you see fit. One of the questions is about to Sheila, if you were able to advance up through the organization in your 9-year fight. And then there's another broad question posed in terms of when did you realize that you had power in your own story? So maybe Marcel, if you can tackle that one, and then we can use that also to close out our panel. So Sheila, if you're able to touch on that specific question, and then we'll go to Marcel.
Can you repeat my question again, please?
Of course. So one of the participants was asking, in your 9-year fight, were you still progressing through the organization, or once you started that first kind of complaint, did that basically start the retaliation? So were you still progressing over those 9 years?
Over those 9 years, once I filed my charge, everything went downhill. I didn't go up or anything. It got worse, where they were trying to get rid of me, sending me in and out of town. And so it was at a standstill. It never did progress.
Thank you, Sheila, and hopefully that answers one of the questions that the participants had, and that's unfortunately often the case, is when we use our voice, it seems like everything changes around us, and we have to make that internal decision: do you keep speaking out, do you keep fighting? So absolutely. And then Marcel, can you maybe follow up and also help us close out this panel? And
Absolutely.
Elaborate a little bit on, when did you realize that you had power in your own story?
I think maybe 6 months or a year in, which is actually when we started to do the summit, because I spent the first 6 months reeling from what was happening to me. And because I am an organizer, I spent the next 6 months trying to figure out how we could alleviate it. And there's, for a while, I was the whistleblower liaison for Pacifica Radio Network, the only one in the country. And I used to filter the stories that would be told on air. So I would tell whistleblowers to keep their stories very, very short, very specific and free of drama. But more importantly, I would try to tell people, what is the reason you're telling your story? Is it to, is it a purge session so you can talk about what happened to you? Or is it for a larger movement, for meaning? And I'm a person that likes to build movements, hence the Whistleblower Summit. And one of the ways that you build a movement is so that people understand that what happened to you indeed does affect what will happen to them. And it is only in that connection of that happened to them, it can happen to me. I need to make sure this doesn't happen to others, that you have the opportunity to build a movement. And once you build a movement, then you start to have real power and the ability to change. So as Natalie said, it isn't just enough to stand outside and scream on the streets. You have to be able to move into a position where you can affect legislation. But I always tell people, when you move into a position of affecting legislation, always remember you can throw the desk out the window. And that's what you want to be able to do. Not to come in and comply, but to come in and to absolutely change.
I appreciate it. And I know we weren't able to get through 100% of the questions in the Q&A, but hopefully we at least covered the general theme of a lot of questions that were posed. And again, this was panel number 1 with Jackie Garrick, CEO of Whistleblowers of America, Ms. Sheila White. She is just trailblazer without a doubt. Burlington Northern and Santa Fe v. White, U.S. Supreme Court. Ms. Kamei, international bestselling author and a state representative for the Dignity at Work Act. And of course, Marcel Reed, who is the founder of the Whistleblower Summit and Film Festival. So I cannot thank each of you enough. You are all heroes, you are survivors, and you continue to use your voice, you continue to take space and also make space for others to make the change that's so desperately needed. And there's really a heightened sense of urgency because even from Miss White's story, if you look at how much time these things take, enough is enough. So I can't thank you all enough. And so feel free to stick around for the rest of the summit if you can. You're always welcome here, and looking forward to working with you in the future. So I appreciate it. So at this time, we're going to take a quick pause just to sync up and get our panelists all set for panel number 2. Panel number 2 is going to be on the role of healing and social justice. So we're just going to show the screen there so that we know what's coming up. And we'll go on mute for about 1 minute, and then we will sync up panel number 2. Thank you.